Hey everybody, what we're going to talk about today is applying sextuplets to the drum set. Now what exactly is a sextuplet? Well, a sextuplet basically is fitting 6 notes equally over one beat. Depending on the sticking, you could look at it as a double paradiddle. You could look at it as a 6-roll, which would be right, left, left, right, right, left. We're going to talk about all the different, not all the different, but a lot of the different ways to apply this little figure to the drum kit. We're talking about this today because it's basically one of my favorites because it's easily adapted to many different styles of music, and it's easily played and felt over the time that's being stated, which of course is that concept alone is paramount in applying any lick or rudiment or phrase or anything you're trying to apply musically. Where it falls against the time, of course, is very, very, very important. And let's not forget the ultimate goal here, which is to be musical and apply these licks that you may learn musically, as opposed to just learning it just to say, hey, look what I can do, look what I can play. It goes way beyond that. People just stop short when they're learning licks. They learn it, and then they get the sticking correct. Maybe they put it around the kit a little bit, and in their mind, it's learned. You're 50% of the way there. The other 50% is then playing it to a click at various tempi, and playing it after that, after you can apply it with some degree of accuracy to a time source, then forgetting the time source and bringing it to the ultimate place, which is to a piece of music. Enough of my spiel here. I know you guys hate to hear me talk. You leave me comments all the time. Oh, too much talking, too much. Well, you know what? For you guys, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're looking for less talk, you check out some other vids, because in my opinion, the way that you are really going to gain the most out of a drum lesson is by listening. You got to be able to apply these things with an approach, with a concept, and always be sensitive to the music. So if you want less spiel, less talking, you may not want to watch this vid, because there's going to be a lot of it. But I guarantee you, if you watch the whole vid, you will take something away from it that you can apply and use in your songs and in your playing and on your gigs. So enough spiel. Let's move it behind the drum kit, and let's now get into applying these sextuplets to the kit. Okay, so here we are behind the kit, and we're now going to venture into applying sextuplets to the drum kit. And the first way we're going to do this is as a 6-roll, a very, very popular sticking and a very, very popular fill. And the 6-roll is right, left, left, right, right, left. And you can check that out on the illustration on the screen. And the first method we're going to use to start learning this riff is to play it on the snare drum, as such. We're going to start off nice and slow. And you want to count the 8th note subdivision underneath this. So you're going to be counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and for each subdivision, you are going to be playing 3 equally spaced notes, like this. I'll use my hi-hat to play the 8th note. 4 and. A little bit slower, in case you need it to be played a little slower. And now, we're going to consider that, and let's call that method 1. So method 1 will be the 6 played on the snare drum. I also want to point out the fact, which I'm sure you've already noticed, that this particular method and the starting method has accents on the right, which is the first stroke, and the left, which is the last stroke. So it always, coming back around to 1, it feels kind of natural. Gon gon, gon gon, ba boom, ba boom. The next thing we're going to do, now, before I move on, make sure you practice that so it feels good and it feels natural, and you play it at many different tempi, many different speeds, because not all music, of course, always keep in mind what the end result here is, and the end result is being able to apply these riffs that we're learning in a musical setting. A lot of guys lose sight of that, and they just, pull these licks out to impress some friends or whatever. But again, ultimately, we want to apply these musically. And I'm not just talking about these licks. These methods that we're going to use here transcend just this lesson. They should be used in everything that you ever learn. The end result should always be playing them and adapting them and using them in a musical setting. That's what we do. We're part of the band. We're musicians. So why we would ever stop at just, okay, I've got it? No. So what we're going to do is we are now going to play even just method 1, which is done on the snare drum, which is basically being played like we would learn any rudiment. What we're going to do is get it closer to where we're trying to go with this, which is to be played in a musical situation. And in a musical situation, how are we going to use this? Obviously, we're going to use something like this as a fill. So it's going to be coming from a groove. So what you should do next, the next step after you get it, in time on the snare drum, is then to play some time, play the lick, and then get back to the time without any fluctuation or minimal fluctuation in the feel or the time. So the next thing you would do, just play a simple lick or a simple groove, and then play the fill, and then go back to time. And the more you repeat something or the more you play something, the quicker you get it. So for all intents and purposes right now, let's just play one measure of groove, one measure of the lick, okay? So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. The next thing we're going to do is now apply what we've just learned on the snare drum in a different way. And we're going to call this method 2, and there's a bazillion methods. We're going to go over 3 of them in this video just to get you jump-started, and then you can take and do whatever you want with these 6s afterward. And I urge you to play them and to experiment with all different ways imaginable, okay? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this sticking and now apply those accents to the toms. So the first right and the last left are going to go on a tom. First right, we're going to use this middle tom here. And then the left, we're going to use this smaller tom. So now your 6, method 2, is now going to sound like this. 1 and 2 and... Okay, so that's method 2. And now, again, using method 2, measure groove, method 2, measure groove, method 2. Okay, so we're still in the fetal stages of this. Even though we're playing a groove and playing a fill, it's, not even close to being musical yet. I mean, you're never really going to play, depending on the music maybe, but you're never really going to play that riff over 4 beats. Again, we're just doing it that way now to get the lick internalized, to get it to feel natural against the time, and to get it from a groove to a fill and back again comfortably. That's all we're doing at this stage. Right now, the goal is out there to get musical, but we're not there yet, okay? So to get closer to being musical, you would probably use this maybe over 2 beats, might be a little closer to being musical instead of 4 beats. So we will play 2 beats of a groove and then 2 beats of the riff, method 2. Okay, so here we go. 1 and 2 and... Okay, that's over 2 beats, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is now back it down. We went from 4-beat fill to 2-beat, which is probably more usable musically. Now we're going to go to 1 beat. So we're going to play an entire measure. We're going to play a measure up to beat 3, and then on 4, we're going to play the fill. So it will be 3 and... 1 and 2 and 3 and... Here it is, playing the groove and then playing the fill. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is then, ultimately the goal would be to play various methods in your playing. Method 1, going into method 2. So now why don't we take a full measure fill again, and we'll play 2 beats of method 1 with 2 beats of method 2, just to get used to going in and out of methods, okay? So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, so you see how that works. And then, of course, you can do 1 beat of each, making a 2-beat fill, which would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay? Just so, you guys, a lot of students of mine will, hear that and go, okay, it's cool, but so what? If you play this, if you get this under your thumb, you can then increase the tempo, and you can then start to hear how cool this lick can be, okay? So let's play it a little. I'll play just an example here of various methods of 1 and 2, okay? Here we go. So you can see it can be quite an effective fill, all right? Okay, this next method now is, method 3. This is a method that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. It's definitely very hip, and it involves now incorporating our kick drum and to get a little bottom end to go along with what we have going on the top side with the hands. And this is the same sticking, except we are now going to replace the fourth note, which is a right hand, and it's the first of the doubled right hands. So right, left, left, right, right, left. That first doubled right hand is going to be replaced with a right foot. Okay? And the best way to start learning this one is, again, keep the hands just on the snare for now, and then we're going to take it somewhere else where you'll see how effective it can be. All right? This is, again, method 3. So here we go with method 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and... The ultimate way to play method 3 for me is to split the hands, okay, or to split the sound sources. Now, to start with this, I'd just like to move my right hand over to the floor tom. Everything else remains the same. So now you have this. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, so you can't really get a great idea of how effective this fill can be at that speed. Right now I'm showing it to you at a much slower speed so you can learn it and understand how the sticking and everything works. Okay, so right now I'll give you another musical example up to speed to where we might use this in a musical setting. Okay, so let's play this a little quicker so you can hear what I'm talking about. I'll play it the way I taught it first, just between the snare and the floor tom and the kick drum. And then I'll start moving the sticking, or I'm sorry, moving the hands around, keeping the sticking the same, okay? So here we go. Definitely something that's, you know, very usable, very cool, very easy to feel. Just a little note on this, adapting this to the time, okay? And this is a little trick that I use. I like to strip away a lot of the notes if I'm having problems playing riffs in time. And this is a great example to use, this particular method, being method 3. Method 3... if you figure out, the way I explained it in the beginning is to count eighth notes, okay, as a subdivision to fit these fills against the time. So, in thinking that way, let's figure out what instrument falls on those counts, okay? And when you strip it away, what ends up happening is the downbeats, or the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, end up falling on the floor tom. The ands that we're also counting, we're counting 1 and 2 and, the upbeats, or the ands, are actually being played with the kick drum. So the skeletal figure that we end up with is just eighth notes being played between the floor tom and the kick drum. So if you're having problems getting this riff in time, a good exercise is to just play the skeletal piece of the fill coming from time, which would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Then what you'd want to do is do half of the measure playing the eighth note, the other half of the measure fulfilling the entire fill, okay? Which would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Again, that should help you latch onto the time a little better and, you know, allow you to feel this easier and play this easier against the time. While you're playing the entire fill, your focus should always be on that eighth note pulse, 1 and 2, and using the floor tom and the kick drum as your mark within the fill. You know, something in there time-wise to latch onto, so these things always end up coming out in time. Another good thing to do now is to then start combining, which is what if we take method 2 and combine it with method 3, which would sound like this. And I'll play, let's see. For now, I'll play 4 measures, or I'm sorry, 1 measure of each, 1 entire measure of each, okay? So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, then we can back it off to 2 beats of each. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay. Of course, you can also go to 1 beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and... and so forth. And of course, when you're doing these combinations, always use them coming from a groove, playing the lick, getting back to the groove. If you practice them this way, you will find when you go to add the element of music, it will be much easier for you to do that, okay? It's very funny the way our mind works in that we can hear and play these things all day long without the other element of music. And sometimes, like I said, we stop without adding these to music, which is insane to me. That's where we're trying to get to. We're trying to be able to play these licks in a musical setting. You know, definitely play these licks to as many different tunes as possible. Before I end the lesson, I'll give you an example of how I play these licks to a piece of music to practice them. Okay, now that you know those 3 methods and some different ways to apply them and combine them, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what happens if you can, at any given time, you can only play these so fast. We are fitting 6 notes into each beat going by, and depending on the tempo, that can be quite difficult. If we can't fit in 6 notes per beat, let's use the fill and fit in 4 notes per beat. So now we've switched gears down into 16th note land as opposed to sextuplet land, and we are now going to use the fill. It's going to be a 6-note grouping, but played as 16th notes against the time. So what's going to happen here? In order to fulfill 6 notes, a 6-note sticking, if we're playing 4 16th notes per beat, we're going to be left with 2 extra notes that could not be fulfilled in that beat, which are going to then carry over or go over the imaginary bar line, and we're going to stretch them into half of the next beat. So we're talking about something that's going to take us a beat and a half to fulfill. So if we play it twice, a beat and a half and a beat and a half, 1 and a half and 1 and a half is 3. We're going to end up with 3 beats, leaving us with 1 beat at the end to do whatever we want with. We could leave space. We could play a little riff at the end. For right now, we're just going to stop on 4 and crash on the one of the following measure. So you would have 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4, 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. We'll do this first using the 6 at a pretty rapid rate, and then I'll do it at the same rate as a 16th note. So first is the 6, okay? And this is if, you're getting to the point where I just can't fit the fill in. You would then switch over to 16th note. So let me play it as a 6 first. 1 and 2 and 3 and... So you can see the 6 is coming out at quite a rapid pace. Here's what would happen now if you made it a 16th note fill at that tempo. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Much more manageable. Now we can even go even faster than that. So say we were playing a pretty quick rock tune, fusion tune, whatever. So the next step would then be to adapt, that was method 1, then adapt method 2 and method 3 as a 16th note, which would be, or as the 16th note form, which would be like this. Method 2, 1E into 2E into 3 into... Okay, so you get the idea. You can then also do method 3, 1E into 2E into 3 into... So what I'm going to leave you here with now are some examples of how I like to play these or practice these with a piece of music as exercises in learning how to adapt these musically. Thank you very much, guys. Check out some of these examples at the end of me playing and practicing this particular exercise against music. Have a good one.